Well, let's stick with tech and two well-known names that made headlines this week. Apple rallying 13%, its best week since July 2020, after agreeing to invest an additional $100 billion in U.S. companies and suppliers. And Intel still managed to post gains for the week as President Trump called for CEO Lip Bhutan to step down, claiming he is, quote, conflicted by past business ties to China, current as well, I guess. Intel responding to the claims, saying the company, the board, and the CEO are deeply committed to advancing U.S. national and economic security interests. Joining us now to discuss both these stories is Ben Bajarin. He's CEO and principal analyst at Creative Strategies. Ben, good to see you. You think Intel's answer here is going to be enough? How much of a threat is a potentially uncooperative President Trump to Intel's turnaround?
I mean, I think it doesn't help things, obviously. I think, this administration has obviously been less engaged with Intel, and especially with this new CEO in Lip Bhutan, even though he just started than prior administrations. I think, obviously, with Biden and even prior Trump, Pat Gelsinger was very, very active. So we do think that there's an element of this, which is, trying to get a conversation going, trying to get some joint win-win announcements with Intel in their increased manufacturing in the United States. And we think an outcome for this will be some form of a meeting of the minds, handshake, win-win, that just talks about more what Intel's doing to invest in America and keep us at the bleeding edge of manufacturing semis.
To your point, maybe this is how President Trump asked for a meeting. I seem to recall not too many weeks ago, he was being very critical of Tim Cook, and Tim Cook visited the White House. And then, we saw from Tim Cook this week the announcement of this investment. The scale on this investment is enormous. And given what Apple's been doing over the years, trying to invest in certain suppliers in order to get the best pricing and prioritization for its own devices, how much in character or out of character of what Tim Cook would have already done did this announcement look to you?
Yeah, it's really hard to see what's net new. I think there was more of a correlation between the companies that's being invested in. Obviously, a whole host of companies have been involved in this, many of them already current suppliers. I think Apple's just doubling down their commitment on what they will keep doing and using in American suppliers, which, again, I think is an interesting point because they have at times used some component providers who are not, U.S.-based, either in China or in some other markets. And so I think it just doubles down their commitment to the component ecosystem as much as possible. And I also think there's some elements of this where, even on earnings call, Tim Cook mentioned that they do expect their CapEx to go up. And so there's a question of what they'll be investing in. I think there's been some speculation about maybe they might start investing in some land or buildings for data centers in a small capacity, not a large capacity, but for their hybrid approach to AI and running some of those in server. So I think we'll see more of that. But it's like I said, it's very hard to see what's net new because most of these companies Apple already works with. I think it's just the reassuring of the commitment to those U.S. companies and the ecosystem that they're investing in. Well,
I mean, I'm looking at this press release, Ben, for Apple and Corning, a $2.5 billion commitment that's new to produce all the cover glass for iPhone and Apple Watches, not just that for ones that are sold in the U.S., but worldwide. And Corning saying that they're going to increase their manufacturing and engineering workforce in Kentucky by 50%. Something that wasn't part of this week's announcement, but also was an investment by Apple, was this $500 million partnership with MP Materials. I mean, it's my understanding, speaking of folks involved in that was years in the making. So I think this idea of reshoring your supply chain and expanding your supply chain, you have to get to a place of scale to even start to think about bringing prices down to make stuff in the U.S. to make it competitive with, for example, manufacturing in China. Is that what this is? Is this really a first step to something that's longer term in terms of supply chain for Apple?
I do think it's part of that. I mean, I think you've seen some of the speculation, too, around, like, let's just say they start using, and I do believe they will, more manufacturing from TSMC, not for leading edge, because obviously we don't have leading edge foundries here from TSMC. But they have other products, right? They can use for Mac, they can use for, as you said, phone, they could use for AirPods, any number of things, right, that doesn't need to run on the most cutting edge semiconductor process. So those are areas where you already can see that scale come in. And I think, again, TI was a part of this, other, even global foundries, right? They're not manufacturing at the leading edge. So I think it's, again, Apple showing, we're bringing components, we're bringing this ecosystem to all of our products. Not all of our products need to be made at leading edge TSMC, and that benefits a wide ecosystem. And I think that's just, again, their commitment. And like you said with Corning, they've worked with Corning forever, right?
Yeah.
It just might be more products that they're bringing glass to, which is, again, a doubling down, I think, of that relationship, which is, again, great for everybody.